The third and final launch title for the Atari Jaguar was also the pack-in. Why didn't I start with the pack-in? Well, because it's also one of the most notorious games on the Jaguar. I guess if everybody who buys a system gets a copy, then that game is going to get some kind of reputation. Now I am about to say one of the most shocking things that I have said in my years of documenting game libraries. Ready? Cybermorph isn't that bad. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's good, because it absolutely is not. It has many critical design flaws. But if you can somehow tolerate the game for the first roughly 45 minutes that it takes to get past the first 9 stages, then Cybermorph improves a lot. And there's a few other things that can help. One of which is putting the game into context. Why is it called Cybermorph? Well, the manual will tell you it's because your T-Griffin attack craft can change shape. There isn't a reason for it to change shape, it just warps a bit when you speed up and slow down. But really the title comes about because of one particular moment in pop culture history. That right there is the special effects shot heard around the world. Being able to take a start point, an end point, and then smoothly transition between those two figures on screen was an absolute revolution in special effects. And while you might not be able to pull off Terminator 2 level transitions on your 32-bit game console, even if it was pretending to be 64-bit, you could do a decent enough job in a reasonable amount of time on off-the-shelf consumer hardware. So in 1992 and 1993, morphing was everywhere. It was the hot special effects buzzword, and everyone incorporated it into everything. Now, even though it was possible to do the math to morph between two images on the Jaguar, it really wasn't possible to do that in real time. The process required looking at pixels, dividing them up into nodes, and then performing math transitions on each node to bring it closer to the final image, and then adjusting the rest of the pixels to account for those changes. These days my video editing software can do things like that on the fly. Look at it go. But in 1993, on a 32-bit processor, it could take hours of calculations. And of course, as you wanted to make it smoother and more detailed, the more math you'd have to do. So Cybermorph wasn't using morphing the way the special effects industry in 1993 was using morphing. They were doing the relatively easier method of shifting polygons around. And that brings me to the 3D graphics. If you only ever looked at console games, then you would have missed out on the long development of 3D graphics in video games. It did not start with Star Fox, although Cybermorph is definitely trying to cash in on Star Fox. No, this style of 3D graphics has been a staple of simulators on computers since the early 80s. Due to a few quirks of technology and economics, video game consoles in the 80s and early 90s were really bad at doing the math that was required for 3D graphics, while computers didn't need to cut the corners on their hardware that led to efficient 3D calculations. So even though PCs might have struggled to quickly refresh the screen, and extra color depth was often considered a luxury, they could make and rotate polygons like nobody's business. 32-bit consoles, on the other hand, could afford to do that math. And since even in 1993 everyone could tell that 3D graphics were the future, it makes a lot of sense that Atari thought that a 3D game was going to be their big system seller. Unfortunately for Atari, the Jaguar hardware was locked in right before the 3D revolution kicked off. This was a problem for all of the consoles of the mid-90s, The fundamental technologies were changing so fast at that time that everyone wound up being outdated and behind the times a year after they released. The Jaguar takes an especially big hit from it because we're going to see a lot of flat-shaded 3D polygons, when by 1994, if things weren't textured, then they were really backwards. So Cybermorph was growing out of the concept of PC simulators and trying to loosen them up a bit for console players. My point in this entire introduction is, Cybermorph was a game very firmly planted in the technology and culture of 1993, and that was technology and culture that shifted pretty much the moment it was released. So let's start drilling into one of the most notorious video games ever made. The game was developed by Attention to Detail, one of several British developers who hitched their wagon to Atari in the mid-90s, and they're probably best known for, Cybermorph actually. Though maybe you were a fan of Blast Chamber, Roll Cage, or Lego Racers too. Attention to Detail makes a few Jaguar games, so we'll see them again. The plot of the game is that automated robotic weapons are overrunning the galaxy. As the heroic forces of, the manual never actually gives them a name. Anyways, as the good guys retreat, they seal away their technology in pods to keep it safe from the Empire. Fortunately, a new prototype morphing craft, the T-Griffin, has been developed. And as we all know, a single ship is all that you need in order to destroy all of the evil forces. The game is divided up into regions, where you have 8 planets that you can clear in any order. Then you go to a 9th planet where you fight a boss, and then you move on to the next region. You will get passcodes that will let you continue from different regions, and you'll have to clear 5 of them in order to beat the game. It took me about 40 minutes of continuous playing to beat the first region. So this is not a short and simple process. On every planet, there's a certain number of pods, and your goal is to collect enough pods that you'll be allowed to leave. Sometimes you have to collect every single one, sometimes you only have to collect some of them. If the pod is out in the open, then there will be a yellow arrow on the radar pointing to the closest one. Once you've collected enough pods, then the arrow is pointing to the exit point for the stage. You fly into that, and then it's off to pick another planet. There are a few hazards to be concerned about when it comes to getting pods. The primary one are the vortex towers. You'll be told if there are any of these on a level when you pick it. These are just little stacks of triangles that can destroy pods. Some of the enemies can pick up and carry pods around, and they'll deliver those pods to the towers. So you should prioritize destroying the vortex towers before you do anything else, otherwise you might not have enough pods to complete the stage. Some of the pods will be contained within structures, and these don't show up on the radar at all. If you have to collect them, then you'll usually wind up roaming the surface of the entire planet, hopefully catching view of something that you can destroy. While the planets aren't large, the draw distance is even shorter, so you pretty much have to be right on top of a structure to spot it. If you manage to collect more pods than you needed, then you'll get bonus points after you clear the planet. And of course, enough points will get you an extra life. Okay, we've got to talk about the control scheme, because if anything is going to drive you nuts about Cybermorph, this is going to be it. The good news is that if you play the game on the Atari 50 collection, like I am, then most of the controls are mapped to something more convenient. But if you're playing on original Jaguar, well then, with Cybermorph they were trying to make sure that a game used all of those buttons. A and C are used to set your speed. You pick out how fast you want to travel, and then you'll keep going that speed until you run into something. Button B is used to fire your weapon. By default it's a single shot, but you can collect tokens that will give you additional weapons. There's a double shot, a triple spread shot, missiles that will drop to the ground and then fly straight ahead. These are only good for taking out structures. Mines that drop out behind your ship and explode a few seconds later. And a flamethrower, which of course is a terrible weapon that is effectively useless. You get limited ammunition for those weapons, and you can carry a maximum of 50 shots for any of them. There's also a rapid fire power-up, which doesn't give you auto-fire, it just means that you can shoot more bullets. That goes away if you get destroyed or if you complete the stage. You switch which weapon you're using by pressing the option button. As for the number pad, 1, 2, and 3 are all used to fire super weapons. Not different super weapons assigned to each button, just you can collect different super weapons and they're all fired by pressing any of those buttons. There are 3 different super weapons that you can collect. One that will destroy all buildings on the screen, and another that will turn your craft into a missile and fly straight ahead at high speed. And then the last one destroys all enemies on the screen. You can carry a maximum of 5 of those weapons at a time, and if you collect a different one, then you lose whatever you had. As for the rest of the buttons on the number pad, number 4 is used to turn the crosshair on and off, 5 through 9 are used to select different camera views, and there's no reason to ever use a different camera view than behind the ship. And finally, button 0 is used to toggle the music on and off. Or at least, that's what the manual tells you button 0 does. Actually, it puts the camera into the rear view, because Cybermorph doesn't have any music during the action. So no, the sounds of the engine, your shots, and your AI companion chiming in are all the audio you get.
Well done.
While you're flying around, you'll notice that your ship has a maximum height it can reach, and that is lower than the tallest terrain. So there will be impassable areas. You'll take damage if you fly into the ground, something that your helpful AI companion will tell you.
Avoid the ground.
And then they'll do it again every single time it happens.
Avoid the ground.
Cynthia, that AI face, is the most notorious part of Cybermorph, because all she does is pop up and give about one of 6 canned lines,
Well done.
none of which are actually helpful. Fortunately, you can mute her in the options screen. But why would you do that? You want to get the full Cybermorph experience. Your ship has an energy bar, and if that runs out, then you'll be destroyed, and you start out with 3 lives. When those lives run out, then you have to redo that whole region from the beginning. That means all of your work on those planets is undone. You can recover energy by picking up the E-tokens that drop, or by flying through a ring that will fully restore your energy. There are also dark blue rings that will take you to a bonus stage after you clear that planet. On the bonus stage, you just need to collect power-ups and then fly through the escape ring before time runs out. Honestly, it's not even worth visiting them. I should mention something about those power-up drops. They are completely random. And so sometimes you'll get useful things, and then sometimes you'll play an entire region without getting anything useful. The super weapon drops in particular are extra rare. What it all comes down to is that you can't plan on having particular weapons. You just gotta take what you've got and go with it. There are special features to make the planets more complicated, and you pretty much won't see them in the first region of space. So there are things like portals that will take you to unreachable areas, or shield generators that you'll have to deal with, or environmental hazards that will come out after you. And you really don't see anything that makes the stages interesting until you're after a point where most people would have quit. Astoundingly enough, Cybermorph did get a sequel. Battlemorph was released for the Jaguar CD, so look forward to that one. Cybermorph has been the target for a lot of ridicule over the years, and I think a lot of that hostility is undeserved. I think I had the most fun with it out of any of the 3 Jaguar launch titles. I also feel like this one probably could have been saved with another couple polishing passes. Refocus the level design, change the progression so that there's less tedium, maybe add some more enemies with more dynamic patterns, though I haven't ruled out that those might show up later in the game. They certainly backloaded a lot of the fun here. For all of its many faults, Cybermorph is at least an interesting game. It's something that reached for the stars and then came up short. And I'll always have more respect for a game that does that than something that just tries to copy other people's work like Trevor McFur.